Hello everyone, welcome to the vBrownBag session. So I'm going to talk today about how we can actually build a successful cloud backup solution. I also have a little example from Veeam as well. First of all, clearly as you can see, Anthony Spiteri is not here. His wife wouldn't allow him to come to Barcelona, so after traveling the globe for a number of weeks in his new role at Veeam, we came up with the idea that we do this session together. Unfortunately, he wasn't allowed, so it's just me, but I thought I'd still put his name up there so I could call him out. That's what you get for being Australian, I guess. So I'm David Hill. I'm a technologist in VMware's technical marketing team. I cover the cloud platform service provider business unit. Been around the block a little while now, so been there about 7 years. I spent 3 years as the lead evangelist for vCloud Air until VMware sold that to OVH. So today I want to talk a little bit about data and what's going on in the world. And if you think about the digital universe, data is growing exponentially. You know, when you look at where we were 2013 to where we're going in 2020, data has grown phenomenally. If you just think about your own kind of life as well, what you do with data, we have so much more data everywhere than what we had years ago. It's becoming a big challenge to actually back this up. And how can we actually leverage some of the cloud environments to actually go and back up this technology? So when you're looking at this, one of the key things for this data growth is unstructured data. So it's not just us taking backup snapshots of virtual machines and moving them around. It's unstructured data, things like photographs, Word files, all these kind of things that are just totally thrown around all over the place that we create every single day, but we don't really provide any relevant information on them to actually go and find them. So also when you think, how many times have you took a photo on your phone and then never looked at it again? Yet you still want to keep that photo. You know, it's like my wedding photos. They're at the back of the cupboard. You know, I never ever get the wedding album out. My wife probably does, but I don't. So I don't reminded how much it cost. But essentially, all that data that we're building up, it never gets analyzed. We never assign any tags to it or metadata to it to recognize that data as we're throwing it around our environments. The other key challenge is missed a slide. The other area for that, when you're thinking about it, is things like log files. You know, everybody uses log files in their data center now. James and I worked together on the Centrica contract years ago, and all we used to do was collect log files. We had them for everything, you know, and that is growing and growing with all these certifications that we have to meet now from a security perspective and analyze them. We have to keep years and years of data of log files. And they're not just simple text files anymore that used to be like a couple of K. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the products grow. You know, look at vRealize automation. The amount of log files that thing churns out is actually ridiculous when you're trying to archive them and look after them. Things like wiki pages as well. Pretty much every business now has wiki pages. You know, VMware has loads of internal wikis all about their products, potential products, past products. You know what VMware's been like over the years, kind of create a product, we sell it for a few years and then we throw it away. But we still have to support those products and we still have all this kind of unstructured data around that. The other key aspect is we're being asked to do more with less. And we see this every single day from an IT admin's perspective. How many people are IT admins here? A few of you. How many people have had to deal with like storage arrays and all that kind of stuff in the past? Yeah, I know you have. When you think about it, these things are really expensive. So every time we go out to Dell EMC, to HP, whoever, and we go buy these storage arrays and we put them in our data centers, we've got a plan for capacity over the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever we're doing the plan over. But the problem is we've just gone and spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever it is. It's all a lot of money to put these actual infrastructure appliances in our data centers. So if all we're doing is filling them up with backups of log files and all that kind of stuff, unstructured data, it's a very, very expensive way to do it. And as a consequence as well, businesses now are putting more and more cost controls on their IT departments to actually not go and spend as much on infrastructure. So that with the age of virtualization, everyone realized they could go and do a lot of stuff, but they could save money with it as well. So when you think about like the old days where we just used to go buy one server to run Windows NT on it with one piddly little application on it, then when virtualization came along, we were asked to basically go and run multiple servers on one single piece of hardware. The same is with storage. This is why you're seeing things like vSAN come along and those kind of storage virtualization technologies to help reduce the costs of what we're doing in the data center. So the more pressure we're getting, we're having to find better ways to buy the equipment, yet storage is growing exponentially. So we're kind of at a bit of a crossroads, really. We need more space, we need more data capacity, yet we have less money to spend on it. So, and when you go and talk to the IT bosses and the CFOs and you're like, I need another 500K for an array, and they go, yeah, no, sorry, but we've got all this data coming down the road. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So then you go back and you sit there and you scratch your head and think about, what can I do? So the kind of aspect for that is thinking about how cloud can actually help you deliver on these storage projects. So things like object storage is a key one. How many people are using object storage today for anything? A few of you. Okay. So when you think about object storage, it's real easy, it's real simple, it's real cheap. Amazon's S3 is a great example. It's like 0.01 cents per gig or something like that, you know. It's really, really cheap to go and spin up and leverage object storage for your backups and your unstructured data. So some of the use cases, kind of three key ones that are real easy to just leverage the cloud to go and build a cloud solution around is backup archiving, as we mentioned. You know, how many people do backup images, snapshots of their virtual machines in their data center? Okay, cool. How many people aren't doing backups? No one? I was about to throw the clicker at you. So when you think about that, object storage is real easy. It's real cheap, real easy way to do it. In the past, a lot of companies are still leveraging tape. So when you think about that backup, not only are you storing those images on a storage array somewhere, you're then copying them off to tape, and some guy comes around in his van, picks up those tapes, takes them to a secure off-site location, all cost, you know. Every time when you want to do a backup, the guy comes back in his little van and brings you the tapes back, and you put them in and everything, and you restore from those backups. It's very, very expensive. Object storage gives you an alternative to that, to the little guy running around in his tapes, sticking all your data and your storage arrays. Another one is things like image media. You know, Facebook is a great example. Now, not everyone is running a Facebook-type business, but Facebook started off, we were all just doing text and posting, I'm eating a burger. Now with Facebook and Instagram, everyone puts a picture on there of the burger that they're eating to let you know. And that's all unstructured data that's built up that Facebook has to store. It's no different in VMware. You know, we have things like Socialcast, which is essentially our internal Facebook. And people are always putting screenshots of programs up there, putting essentially Word files, PowerPoint, sharing it all on there. And VMware has to find somewhere to store all that. They have to keep copies of it, need to keep backups of it. Same with the wiki pages. And then, of course, shared files. Everybody's been doing shared files since the invention of NetWare and file services, you know. Everybody used to have G drives and log in and dump all their group things, and then they had all their home directories where you used to put all the pictures that you never wanted IT to find. We've all been there, and we've all had to back it up. But of course now, in the old days, a Word doc was a few kilobytes. Now a Word doc can be 100 meg, because people throw graphs and everything in there. It's growing exponentially. So even shared files and shared repositories, you can start to look at object storage to leverage it as a back-end storage environment, and maybe have a virtualization appliance as a cache. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the biggest thing that you'll find is when you talk to enterprises, their biggest storage projects are still backups, which you kind of think is a bit ridiculous. We've been doing backups for years and years. You know, we've been backing stuff up since the days of mainframes. But it's still their biggest project when it comes to administering and spend for in a storage project, which I find actually unbelievable when you think about everything that we do today in a business from an IT perspective, that the biggest spend from a storage perspective is still backups. You know, I just find it unbelievable when you think about it, especially when you think about things like switches and administering all those kind of things. They're not the easiest things to administer, but managing your backup solution is still the biggest project that you do from a storage perspective. So how can you leverage the cloud? How can you leverage object storage? Well, this is kind of a kind of example of what I do at home. So I like my photos. I take hundreds of photos on my iPhone. My wife takes hundreds of photos on her iPhone. We probably never look at them again, as I mentioned, but I want to, being a bit of a geek, I like to back things up, and I also like multiple copies of them. You know, being in Barcelona, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get my phone pinched, so I want to make sure they're all backed up. So essentially what I do is I start with my phone or my camera, and with Dropbox, I like Dropbox, like $99 a year for a terabyte, real easy. I have an app that every time my location changes, it automatically uploads all my photos into Dropbox off my phone. So I never need to worry. I know they're there. The problem is my wife has access to Dropbox and she doesn't understand what the delete button is. So she has the ability to delete all my photos. So what I have is my Mac Mini at home also syncs with Dropbox, so it pulls them all down. So I instantly know I've got two copies of my data there. I've got one at home and one on Dropbox. But I'm never quite happy with just two. I also have a PX4 device. It's a NAS appliance that I got from EMC. So that syncs with my Mac Mini at home. It's also a media server. So all my photos now appear on my TV. So my kids can see them. So when Daddy's off in the California desert shooting his guns, they appear on the TV and he's like, whoa, Daddy's cool, that's awesome. But ultimately, with this, I'm still not convinced that it's secure enough. So my house can burn down, so I instantly lose those two locations. And with Dropbox, again, my wife, probably, as the house is on fire, burning down, she sat there deleting photos. So my PX4 automatically backs up to Amazon S3. Every time a file gets dropped on my PX4, it just automatically uploads it to S3. Now I think I've got about 4 terabytes of data in S3, and I've got it split between Europe and the US, and essentially I think I pay about $5 a month for all that data up there, which it just drops on my Amex card every month, and frankly I don't notice $5 a month. So it's really, really simple, really easy to leverage. You know, most appliances now have integration with object storage, whether it be Google, Amazon, OVH, whatever the object storage platform is. It's really, really easy to build the integration. And the great thing is, it just all happens automatically. So if for some reason I decide I don't want Dropbox anymore, I don't have to worry about migrating all my data around. It's still all in an object storage platform. So it's really, really simple to build that out. Of course, I've kind of gone to the extreme because, as I mentioned, I am a geek and I like to mess around with things and try things out. But essentially, that really isn't difficult to implement, you know, especially when you use Dropbox and a device that automatically uploads. So I mentioned file shares as well. There's loads of file share appliances out there now that you can deploy just on top of vSphere, just deploy an OVF, and it will create something like a CIF share for your infrastructure. And then essentially, when you think about like the log files as the prime example, right, you can just deploy like an appliance out there in your infrastructure and have a map drive somewhere, and you can drop all these log files onto that, and it will automatically sync with an object storage bucket and just upload them all. And then it'll eventually, depending on what cache settings you have, it will delete the log files from the local cache on the appliance, but they're still in object storage. But the beauty of it is the database still knows all those files exist. So when you access that file share, you can just simply go on, and if it needs a file that isn't on the cache, it just pulls it straight back down from object storage. So it's real simple, real easy. You've implemented a massive log file store there with very, very little cost. All right, so it's really simple to build and really simple to implement. And the great thing about that is just presenting things like over iSCSI or NFS or CIFS makes it integrate with everything that you have today. So you're not actually changing any of your internal policies. A lot of people have log file stores and log files that are just automatically exported and archived to certain locations. You know, when you think about like a lot of the VMware products, they all just throw them out over NFS and they drop there, and then if you ever need to do any troubleshooting, you go and search for them. But as I mentioned, those storage arrays that you're normally sticking all that data on is pretty expensive. So leveraging something like this gives you the opportunity so you can just go and build out that kind of infrastructure without having to go out and buy all the actual hardware that goes in a data center. So quick show of hands, how many people actually struggle to manage their data capacity in their data centers? Everyone's like got everything planned for the next 5-10 years? So, see, nobody puts their hands up, but then they all laugh when you ask the question. So that's the challenge, though. I think the biggest challenge I ever had as an architect for any kind of data center product was capacity planning. You know, what is it going to look like in 3 years? The whole life cycle refresh of that is just gives you a headache every single night, and it's a big challenge. So thinking about that and thinking about how you can leverage these new cloud technologies to build that out is quite important and quite critical to a data center deployment. So Veeam, obviously, as Anthony Spiteri was meant to be here, we were meant to talk a little bit about what Veeam can do and how they can build him out. I won't do it justice, but essentially, when you think about the VMware Cloud Provider Program, which used to be called the vCloud Air Network, that's like 4,500 service providers offering cloud services all powered by VMware technology. So you can build out very simple backup policies and backup solutions using something like Veeam and a VMware cloud provider. Iland is a great example. They do a lot of Veeam backups, a lot of backups for enterprise customers. And essentially, Veeam have a 3-2-1 rule. So they're not quite as pedantic as me and have multiple copies spread all around the world, but you have 3 copies of your data, whether it's production data, a backup, and then a copy of that, just in case. Now, when you think about that, sometimes you think, well, that's a bit ridiculous. I've got these backups and I know it's off-site. But having that 3rd copy is essentially like having that final insurance policy in place for that data, just in case something goes wrong. You know, if your data center's burnt down and the guy's in his van driving the tape and he has a big crash on a motorway, then what do? You know, your tapes are on fire in the van, your data center's on fire through something else, you're kind of stuck. So that 3rd copy, while you think is a bit of overkill, it does give you that extra assurance. Now, of course, if you go and pull that copy down and the next guy crashes, then I think you kind of need to give up because you're the unluckiest person in the world. But essentially, having those 3 copies makes a big difference. Typically as well, from a Veeam perspective, most people do disk storage or tape backups. But Veeam now also allow you to back up off-site to the cloud, to object storage. So it makes a big difference when you're looking at that. And if you're a service provider, anyone here a service provider? Okay, there you go. Right, a way to make money is to leverage Veeam and build out a backup solution. Anyone doing the Veeam backup stuff? You, okay, you can come present this then. So essentially what you're doing is you're providing a offering to customers to leverage, who are Veeam customers, to leverage your storage as a backup solution. So you can deploy things like this cloud gateway and a cloud repository So any Veeam customer can point their backup product essentially to this endpoint and then say, I want these data stores, these data sets, sorry, backed up and stored off-site as well. And then it will simply just copy it up to this VMware cloud provider and store it on Veeam's repository out the back. So, and it helps you build out that whole 3-2-1 rule. And it's a real simple way for a service provider to go build a new business. Okay? For a non-service provider, just a consumer, it's a real cheap, easy way if you're using Veeam. How many of you who aren't service providers are Veeam customers? 1, 2, okay, 3. All right, I'm going to ask for commission later off Spiteri, I think. But it gives you an easy way to just go and store your backups off-site as well without having to actually do anything to your data centers. And then finally, from an availability perspective, what's happening now, and this talks about Veeam availability, but I'm going to talk about it from a VMware perspective. What you're seeing now is this whole multi-cloud world. When you think about in the past, for the past 3, 4, 5 years, I've been talking about hybrid cloud and how everyone was moving to the hybrid cloud. But realistically, what's actually happened is people haven't just gone for one cloud service. They've got some stuff in AWS, they've got some stuff in a VMware-based cloud, they've got some stuff in Google. And we're living in this kind of multi-cloud world now, where if you think about object storage as a great example, is maybe you've got workloads running in a VMware cloud provider cloud, but you're doing backups to object storage in AWS. Maybe at some point you're going to have VMware on AWS as well as your on-prem environment, and then you're leveraging Google's object storage. You know, it's all based around what contractual terms you get with the different vendors. And people are moving more and more away from this kind of vendor lock-in that we've seen for certainly my whole lifetime in IT. You know, first of all it was mainframes, then it was Microsoft, then VMware was the de facto kind of hypervisor, and we've had these vendor lock-ins for the whole time I've been in IT, and people are kind of fed up with that now. And with the advent of cloud services, this whole vendor lock-in kind of situation is going away. So this multi-cloud world, you kind of see here as an example, we've got like Amazon Web Services, we've got Google Cloud, Azure. Veeam offer Cloud Connect services to all these public clouds. They can back up on-premises infrastructure, and they can also do their own managed clouds. But what you're seeing is it doesn't matter whether you're running hyperconverged from Dell EMC, from HP, maybe you've got some UCS blades, all these different technologies now. Everybody's starting to use the cloud to back that up and leverage that and build that out. So when you look at this, it's not just about Veeam, it's about this whole multi-cloud world. Because how many people, and that, please be honest, how many people are using Hyper-V as well as vSphere in their data centers? Yeah, I knew you would. So a few guys. And that's the biggest challenge that people have now is, yeah, KVM as well. So, yeah, exactly. You know, when there's different hypervisors, there's different hardware, there's different storage arrays, there's different network switches. It's just getting ridiculous when you think about it. You know, some stuff you got running on vSAN, and maybe you're doing stretched vSAN across 2 locations, but vSAN is not going to work with Hyper-V. Don't think it ever will. So when you're thinking about all these different technologies, it's not just about the cloud. It's about how you can pick the right products to fit your infrastructure and your environment. So when you're James and he's looking at his vSphere VMs and his Hyper-V VMs and how do I back them up, and he's ran out of storage capacity, you're then looking at things like different products that can then go off and do different things, whether it's object storage or maybe it's NFS to a different location, however you want to do it. It's all built into that kind of whole multi-cloud dimensional world that we're living in now. So I'm kind of going to finish with a few minutes left, and I'll open it up, see if anyone's got any questions, anything that you want to ask. No questions? No? Oh, okay. So we don't have any questions, so I'm going to say thank you very much for coming, and we'll open it up for questions in a minute.